elections in Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons question. The Southern Cameroons question, or the Anglophone problem, has been hotly disputed and has given rise to debates globally on minority rights and the quest for recognition. Today, we have two refined juggernauts, legal luminaries, and long-standing champions of the Southern Cameroon's cause, who, objectively speaking, do not need any presentation. These are household names within the Southern Cameroon psyche because of the roles they have played in the evolution of the Southern Cameroon's consciousness. With me in the studio is Professor Carlson Anyengwe and Dr. Simon Monzo. Professor Carlson is coming all the way from South Africa, and Dr. Monzo has been with us here in the US in the state of Atlanta, Georgia. Gentlemen, welcome. Doc, thank you for accepting this invitation.
Thank you.
Two of you, like I said, do not necessarily need a profile of what you symbolize and represent to the people of Southern Cameroons. So I felt that it was very important, given that we are at an inflection point in the contraption called Cameroon. There is a complete lack of leadership as far as our people are concerned. We can see that each region is beginning to strategically position themselves, looking forward to what is happening at the Supreme Magistracy in that country. So I thought that it is quite important that I have the two of you to speak to our people, given our present predicament, the situation with the pain and suffering of our people, and even to clarify on a lot of the misconception and the confusion as far as the question of Southern Cameroon is concerned. So I would let you do a first intro, Dr. Monzu, and then have Professor Carlson speak to our viewers. Again, welcome to the spotlight.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for having us both here. It is a rare opportunity. It's one that both Carlson and I have been looking forward to, but which appeared will never come, for us to be in the same space, talking about Cameroon, and specifically about the Southern Cameroons. You've talked of lack of leadership. Well, it is not surprising that the Cameroonians, the Southern Cameroonians, appear to lack leadership at this time, because if we look back, when Carlson, if you like, Professor Anyangwe, the late barrister Helen, and I convened the All Anglophone Conference, we did that simply because the three of us were members of the Constitutional Drafting Committee that was appointed by the Tripartite Conference in Yaoundé, and we decided that we would press the Anglophone, if you like, the Southern Cameroon question into the proceedings of that committee. And when we didn't get the kind of response that we expected from other members of the committee, we decided that the people of the Southern Cameroons as a whole should weigh in on this. And so we decided to convene the All Anglophone Conference in Boya. And the All Anglophone Conference resulted in the establishment of an Anglophone National Council, with which we were assigned various roles. Barrister Elad was chair, Carl was Secretary General, I was a spokesperson, and there was a whole host of other positions in the Council of 65. So you see that out of the will of the people of the Southern Cameroons meeting in a place like that, they gave us the mandate to lead because there were going to be other steps following the All-Anglophone Conference. So naturally, Southern Cameroonians had their leadership by the will of a conclave that brought together more than 5,000 people. You know, but in this second round, if I may call it that, it's been difficult to see who the leadership of the Southern Cameroons are. In the first place, you would expect leaders to be leaders of an organization that's following one course, pursuing one course. But obviously, in this second generation, iteration of the Anglophone problem, the Southern Cameroons question, we don't seem to have Southern Cameroonians, you know, pursuing the same goal as we did in 1993? 1993. That's the first thing. The second thing is that even within each of the different directions in which people are moving, there is no way of determining who is the legitimate leader. There are factions of all kinds amongst people who are pursuing the same objective. In short, this is just to confirm what you've said, that at this point in time, the Southern Cameroonians, the Anglophones, the North and Southwest people, whichever way we want to give them, we have a leadership issue. And it is not surprising, therefore, that at the time when, as you indicated, other regions are weighing into the situation in Cameroon right now, Anglophones, they seem to be, you know, they seem not to be in a position to articulate their own grievances right now. That's a fact.
Prof.
Yes, let me I'll go along with what Simon has said. I think historically we've played that role. For now, the current generation has a generational responsibility to take up that mantle where we left and ensure that they close ranks, organize themselves, and move forward in the interest of our people. If they don't, they would have failed. We believe we did the right thing at the time we did, we delivered. It is now for this generation to take up and pursue this next level of engagement, of fighting, as it were, for the life of the Southern Cameroons and Amazonia. So I think that's where we are. The responsibility is theirs. We cannot perpetuate ourselves. At the same time, we're saying that leadership cannot be perpetual. We cannot be seen as standing for and say, oh, we want to provide that leadership. Well, we'll provide leadership as advisors if we're asked, if our opinion is sought. The short of that, the responsibility is entirely on our people, this generation, to organize itself and provide a purposeful leadership.
But let me, touching on that, Carl, you will remember that before we convened the AAC in Buea, we went to our elders.
Correct.
You and I went to Kumba,
yes,
where we saw Mfomukete and Bile, with Sam, the late Barrister Ellard. In short, we consulted all our elders,
yes,
the chiefs, our moral authorities, and so on.
Correct.
To get their buy-in, to get them to understand what we're proposing to do. And that's why Buea was such a huge success with all these eminent Southern Cameroonians of all walks of life, ministers, funds, chiefs, everyone came to Buea. But that's because we did the groundwork and we ensured that everyone understood what the purpose was.
Correct.
And when we got there, we made the case. It was a matter of retrieving a part of our autonomy within Cameroon, and everybody bought into that goal.
Correct.
So again, we left that place with a common purpose.
Yes.
But today, I can tell you, I don't know what your own experience has been, but I can tell you that the young people today on the one hand, want to treat you and me, our generation, as past. They even say that we didn't do anything. The reason why they are you know. So on the one hand, they tell us that our own era is past, which is fine. I mean, who would have a child, groom that child, and 30 years later, you would not want that child to replace you? That would be a natural thing to do.
Exactly.
But then the child has to be prepared.
Yeah.
And the question we ask today is whether they are prepared.
Yeah.
How can they achieve any objective if they're in dispersed ranks?
Yeah.
First, there is dichotomy, those who want federation, those who want independence, and then when you go into those who want independence, there are factions. You go among those who want federation, there are factions. Yeah. At the end of the day, how are they going to organize themselves for
leadership? I think you made a very valid point there. Indeed, we went right from the south to the north, visiting all these eminent people, chiefs. I remember when we went to go to the chiefdoms, to the font of Nsok, were so well received. Font of Com were so well received, Bafut, and the font Info, Mukete, were very well received. And at each stop, they gave us all their blessings. And I think this was part of the whole thing, conscientizing our people, for them to know exactly what our issue is, and what we think is the solution for us at that time. And I think the current generation should borrow a leaf from what you just said. It would be important for them to actually get out there and sell our current agenda to our people so that they can get buy-in, as you say. That is very, very important for strengthening, first of all, the leadership that is going to emerge out of what will be created, and secondly, to get a buy-in from all these people, chiefs and eminent people in our society and community. Then they will understand. And by the way, I mean, you remember, even the forces, they understood where we stood, where we were going to, what we want, because we did our homework. So I think they should be able to do their homework now. If that homework is not done, don't blame the older generation for not doing a job. We pass the mantle over to you, and please,
I think
manage that responsibility.
I think the jury is still out. If you pass the mantle to the younger generation, the guy there in the White House is still older than you people. There is one in Etudi who is still has a vision for us to get into 2025. Now, to get really to the cross of this conversation, there is a growing body of literature on what was originally envisioned as a free political association of the French and British Cameroons and its dramatic effects on the people of the British Southern Cameroon. Prof, could you briefly describe the history of the Southern Cameroons and the Republic's alleged annexation and colonization of Southern Cameroons following the achievement of its independence? Prof.
Yes, of course. There has been a colonial takeover and control of the Southern Cameroons by the other partner whom we thought and believed were forming a legitimate political partnership with them. And this has manifested itself in many ways. Historically, we all know that in 1972, even before that, you recall that Ahijo in many instances claimed that the UN gave Cameroon Republic an obligation to accept the Southern Cameroon, which he characterized as a returning part of the territory of French Cameroon. Of course, all of that was just political hot air, because there's no such thing. But it served its purpose at that moment. And in 72, and that's where the drama started, openly. And I say openly because before then, the drama started in different ways. In 72, as a result of a conspiracy, and I use that word advisedly because we know the group of five who conspired to have that thing, which we call the so-called referendum. And those conspiracies, none of them was from the southern Cameroon. They're all from La République Cameroon. When that happened, they took over the southern Cameroons and appointed their own governors, their own people, to take control over the territory, militarize the whole place, and actually deprive us of a voice. And since then, we have been crying that this is not exactly what we bargained for, and that course should change. And that's one of the reasons, like Simon was saying, why at the tripartite we had to recenter this whole debate about the position of the southern Cameroons or West Cameroon in this whole equation. And when nobody appeared to pay attention, we took the matter to our people. We said, well, you are the sovereign people. This is what they are saying. This is what we feel. You be the final judge. And they did. And they gave us a mandate. And it's well expressed in the two documents which eventually came out, one in Boya and one in Bamenda. And I think people should go back and read those documents, because they're really seminal documents which came out. And they express our position, our anger, and what we think should be done. But of course, Cameroon Republic has paid no attention, partly because of what you just mentioned earlier about referring to us as a minority. You see, the whole concept of a minority is to give the impression that you don't count for anything, and that is the so-called majority that count, and that therefore the majority people can decide for the minority. And that's why personally I've always objected to referring to the Southern Cameroons ambassador as a minority. Minority of what? We cannot be in a partnership supposedly which are supposed to have an equal, and they refer to us as a minority. Because even within Cameroon Republic itself, there are so-called minorities. If you are looking at minority even in terms of just counting of numbers, then they have minorities as well. So we need to organize ourselves the way we want, and they organize themselves the way we want, and that's what we concluded at Boya. And then live together if they want to. But if they refuse that kind of arrangement, and they insist on imposing on us, controlling us in every way politically, right now, since then, tell me what voice we have. I know there are nominal, there are sinecures which are provided for some of our people, who for them, the finality of everything is to get all the sinecures and they think they've arrived. No, we should look at the bigger picture, the people as a whole. Where would our people be 50 years from now, 100 years from now? If the picture you get that our people 50 years from now and so on would have been completely wiped out politically, and in a sense also, even literally speaking, then you are talking of the ultimate genocide of the Southern Cameroons.
Before we get to those deeper points, Dr. Muzu, the Republic of Cameroon had their independence in 1960. Now, I'm not a legal mind, but by joining in 1961 with the people of the Southern Cameroons, did that in effect, or did they in effect lose their sovereignty?
Who?
The Republic of Cameroon.
Okay, I think when we approach this question of the relationship between the Southern Cameroons and the Republic of Cameroon and its subsequent evolution, we should, in my mind, make a distinction between the period 1st of October 1961 to the introduction of the unity state in 1972 and the period after 1972. Now, prior to 1972, or let me say prior to the 1st of January 1960, British Southern Cameroons and French Cameroons were on an entirely equal position, in the sense that they were both trust territories of the United Nations, given British Cameroons to the Southern Cameroons to the British, and French Cameroon to the French, to administer on behalf of the United Nations. So, the same status, no difference. Now, it was the responsibility under the UN Charter, the responsibility of these administering authorities to prepare their respective territories towards. The Charter says self-governance or independence. Self-governance or independence. Now, the French, to cut a long story short, come 1st of January 1960, the French granted independence to their part of to French Cameroons, in accordance, therefore, with Article 76B of the UN Charter. When it came to British Southern Cameroons, that should have happened as well, right? The British should have granted us independence for us to stand on our own. But our problems began when, instead of doing that, the British decided that our territory was not viable enough to stand on its own. In spite of the fact that the same British were granting full independence to a whole, to a panoply of small countries, islands, and all of that around the globe, who were not more populous than us, who in size their territory was not larger than us, who in terms of economic viability they were not more viable than Southern Cameroons, but it remains, if you like, an unknown to this day why Britain decided. The official reason they gave was that the territory was not economically viable. But that was wrong. But that is the beginning of our problem. Because once Britain decided that we could not get independence on our own, the UN then limited our people in our territory to make a choice between joining Nigeria, with whom our territory had been, the British had administered our territory, jointly with Nigeria. We were even an integral part, as it were, of the Eastern region institutions in Enugu. So one choice, therefore, one option was for us to maintain that relationship by you gain independence, but you gain independence if you become part of Nigeria. Or you gain independence if you become part of the Republic of Cameroon. Now, why Republic of Cameroon? And this is important that as we understand the history of this thing, we should face the facts. Why Republic of Cameroon? Because, number one, the two territories have been administered as one by the Germans. Although some will tell you that there were other territories in the same, but that's a different story. But these two, the historical facts are that these two were once administered together by the Germans. But even more pertinent is the fact that there was a breed of Cameroonian nationalism of both Anglophones, what we call Anglophones and Francophones. Before 1st January 1960, there were young Cameroonians, most of them at university in France for the Francophones, in Ibadan, in Nigeria for the Anglophones. Carl, we know some of the names. The Fonlongs and the Anomangus, Albert Mukom, and so on our own side. On the other side, you have all the Tekin Buma and a whole host of young people, Support Prizo and so on, who developed what they call the Cameroon idea. Cameroon with a K, K-A-M-E-R-U-N. The Cameroon idea. So for these young people on both sides of the Mungo, it was the ideal that they pursued and which they fought for was that the two Cameroons should come back together. Okay? So, in the light of that, there were those who pushed that Southern Cameroons should choose between Nigeria, with which has been administered, and French Cameroon, for whom some of its sons and daughters were pushing. Hence, the question of the referendum. Okay? Now, but when the referendum was conducted, our people chose overwhelmingly in favor of union with La République. Okay? Now, so in my own mind, there is no doubt in terms of authenticity of us joining La République, whether it was the right thing, the right position for us to have been tied to or not is a different matter. But the fact remains that the referendum of 11th of February 1961 went in favor of us joining. Now, after we joined, and this is where I come to your question. Now, what was the consequence of our joining? You know, people sometimes blame Pafoncha, Pamuna, all these people, our elders, they didn't bargain enough, and so on and so forth. No. They bargained enough. They bargained enough to the point of obtaining the agreement of a sovereign state called Republic of Cameroon, Francophone Cameroon, for it to agree to give up its sovereignty.
Correct.
You see? So the constitution of the 1st of October 1961, under that constitution, Republic of Cameroon, which had attained independence on the 1st of January 1960, agreed to cease to be a sovereign state and to become simply the federated state of East Cameroon.
Mm-hmm.
So, but my answer to your question is direct. They lost their sovereignty. Okay. Now, British Southern Cameroons, which had been prepared for Britain, by Britain to independence, and Britain granted that independence, except that it had to be by joining. So, on the 1st of October, British Southern Cameroons became independent. But as a consequence of its joining Republic of Cameroon, it also relinquished that independence and became simply the federated state of West Cameroon. Mm-hmm. And now the two, Federated State of West Cameroon, Federated State of East Cameroon, joined together to form the Federal Republic of Cameroon, which is a sovereign one. Emerged as a sovereign state. Mm-hmm. We should make no mistake about that. Mm-hmm. So any talk of the Republic assimilating us as who? As who? So that arrangement was in fact pursuant to the agreements negotiations that our people made. And that's why up to 1972, it was fine. They were a federated state, we were a federated state. They lost their sovereignty, we lost our sovereignty in favor of a new entity called the Federal Republic of Cameroon. Things started going bad only after Ahijo decided in that so-called referendum of 1972 to abolish the federation and introduce a unitary state. Once they introduced a unitary state, it now became a matter of culture and numbers. Mm-hmm. It became a matter of the ascendancy of one culture over another within the same unitary state, the ascendancy of one group of population, the Francophones, against Anglophone in terms of numerical strength, and the tendency to make us second-class citizens and everything. That's where the problem begins.
To press you on that before going to Prof, could that be the reason why we hear people talking about assimilation from 1972?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Prof, arguably the international experiment of independence by joining has been very confusing to our people. A lot of people do not really understand what that whole thing meant by independence by joining. Mm-hmm. And like Dr. Monzo has tried to explain, and it really makes sense now. I can see some of the comments that are coming online. There's this confusion between independence by joining and the sovereign independence of Southern Cameroon. Can you help our people throw some light on that?
Yes. But let me just say that Simon is absolutely correct. I think there's a conceptual misunderstanding. There is what is called independence. And at that time, if you look at all the literature at that time, people were just talking about independence, full stop, nothing else. But most of the time, they will mean sovereign independence. And sovereignty, when you put the two together, sovereign independent state, it means that the state is not subject to any other earthly authority. That's what it means as a sovereign state. And independence means that, in our example, the colonial authority washes its hands off responsibility for administering the territory, become independence. That independence has nothing to do with by joining, which people have interpreted, saying you had that independence as a result of having joined French Cameroon. So join French Cameroon, get independence. I've heard some of them, some French Cameroon people saying that, oh, you became only because you joined us. In other words, if you didn't join us, not become independent. No, that's not correct. It said independence by joining. It didn't say independence after joining. So the Southern Cameroons achieved independence, or decolonized. However, it was not sovereign independence. It was not sovereign independence because they had to join French Cameroon, and like someone said, to form a federal system, within which we forego asserting what level of independence we had and accepting autonomy, internal autonomy. And French Cameroon ceased being a sovereign state and became a federated state. The two countries now became federated states over an overarching sovereign independent state called the Federal Republic of Cameroon. I think people must have this very, very clear in their mind. So there is no question of saying that, oh, French Cameroon then, after acquiring you, because that's the word they're trying to say, they had independence. It's a complete nonsense. If you look at literature at that time even, whether at the UN Charter or other instruments, they only just talked about independence. The politicians at that time were themselves very confused in the use of this terminology.
And let me come in there. You see, because again, all people, the Southern Cameroonians, have to disabuse themselves of this notion that we were annexed, as it were, or taken over, as it were. Because under the constitution of October of the Federal Republic of Cameroon came into effect on October 1st, 1961. Imagine the sovereign state of the Republic of Cameroon, as I said, became just a federated state. And we became a federated state. Now, they had a parliament. That federated state had a parliament. We had our own parliament in Buea. And then the two had the Federal National Assembly, okay, of 15 members. And the first 15 members were taken proportionately, they would say, 10 from the West Cameroon House of Assembly, 40 from the East Cameroon House of Assembly, put together to constitute the first Federal House of Assembly. So again, parity of treatment. We didn't have an army. They didn't have an army either from the moment they joined. Even though they had an army, when they became a sovereign state, they have a fledgling army there. But that army became the federal army, so East Cameroon didn't have an army. We didn't have an army. The East Cameroon had their police, we had our police, the West Cameroon police force. So there was, to a large extent, parity of treatment between the two. The devil, I would say, came into this thing in 1972.
Correct. And, so, and on what other thing?
Inevitably, the two former trust territories were joined after the plebiscite, with what you guys are saying. However, some have argued that the suppression of the bilateral agreement of the federation of equal status, the nullification of their self-governing status, and worst of all, the wrongful transfer of the self-governing state to the Republic of Cameroon on no known terms became a complete recipe for a disaster that finally erupted in 2016. Veteran activists and statesmen like late Molanjo Lutumbe shrewdly coined it "Njumba no be married." Our people get quickly carried away with simple but effective framing of argument like this. What were the terms of this marriage or this union? Because there are people who have argued that whatever agreement was reached in Fumban was supposed to be taken back to our own House of Assembly in Buea or the House of Chiefs for ratification. The argument out there is there is no union treaty. A lot of people don't understand a lot of the legalese that is involved with this argument that there is really no marriage certificate between the Republic of Cameroon and the people of Southern Cameroon.
Okay. I'm not sure if we're talking about agreement, a loyalty language was reached at Fumban.
Okay.
It was change of views, talk, and so on. And if I understand the process, Ahejo gave draft constitution for the delegation of the Southern Cameroons to indicate areas where they thought needed to be reviewed, which they did. They did. And they submitted. And one of the things, and interestingly, one of the clauses which they insisted on being added, apart from things like human rights, which was very, very important on the agenda there, was that there should be a secessionist clause in the federal constitution, you know. And Ahijo, after receiving all of these, according to reports, said, well, he accepts this, he accepts that. Secessionist clause is not going to be by the next constitution, and so on. So it's not like they stood there, the two sides, they hammered out an agreement, both sides signed to say, okay, this is an agreement. But apparently there was an understanding that even after Ahijo had included those clauses, the proposals made by the Southern Cameroon delegation, there was going to be a reconvened meeting at which they would tick out the things they agreed on and so on and so forth. But that didn't happen. There was never a reconvened meeting to go through that constitution, what Ahijo had said he was going to include, for them to now say, okay, this is what it is. And so the Southern Cameroon delegation was quite very surprised when the federal constitution came out. It's still a mystery, I must say, who the actual authors of drafting of that federal constitution were. You know, when you go at a meeting like that, you exchange views, but you need some people, small group of people, often be lawyers, who put that in lawyerly language, the constitutional language. Who did that? We're not too sure. But I've read from one authoritative author in France who said there was a British lawyer and a French lawyer who met and put out all of that, what emerged as the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Cameroon. But interestingly is that that Constitution was approved on 1st of September 1961 by the legislature of French Cameroon. And it's that document that was given to the Southern Cameroon legislature, which most of them were very surprised to see. And the world said, this one, I remember the late Motombi was saying, but we talked about this, we're still to revisit this. But how come this is this and so on? That is still a very murky area, which I think we still need to do some research to find out. But right now, I'm not too sure whether it is really very relevant at this particular point in time as we move forward, because that thing is already in the past now.
Dr. Muzu, let me press you on that. If I may understand Prof very well, there is no union treaty or union agreement. My question to you is that really necessary? In this situation where we left or came together as two states of equal parity, was there a need for a marriage certificate, as Mola would put it, or was not necessary?
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, Echu, because this has been the source of all the confusion within the Anglophone community, if you like, the community of Southern Cameroonians, to the point of making it eventually making our case weak, the case that we try to present these days, really weak, because we are deviating ourselves from the actual situation and living in this illusion that we have created for ourselves. We have to recognize that we were dealt a bad hand by Britain when it limited our own independence to joining Nigeria or the Republic. But that had consequences. Take Northern Cameroons, which were in the same position like us, right? British Northern Cameroons was a trust territory of the United Nations, administered by Britain, also, of course, a former colony of Germany. Yeah. So British Northern Cameroons was in the same situation as us, administered by Britain. Now, the same question was asked to them when it came to their own independence. The same question, do they want to achieve independence by joining Nigeria or Republic of Cameroon? Now, they, in their overwhelming majority, voted in favor of joining Nigeria. Where are they today? They are in Nigeria. And the arrangement arrived at between Nigeria and them was to draw them into Nigeria, not even as a separate state at the time when Nigeria had 3 regions, the northern, the eastern, and the western region. Northern Cameroons, given its specificity, could have at least received the status of a region, the way that we Southern Cameroons became a quasi-region in that same Nigeria. But what did Nigerians do? The Nigerians absorbed Northern Cameroons into Nigeria as part of the Southern, they called it the Southern province. You see what I'm saying? So, that was the result of the negotiations, whichever way they were conducted, that was the outcome. And maybe in the creation of many states from 3 to 6 to 9 to, I think, now 36, that territory, I don't know whether it constitutes one state or several. But the important thing is that at the time that they joined Nigeria, they joined completely absorbed into northern Nigeria as the Southern province within northern Nigeria, one of 3 Nigerian regions at independence. Okay? Now, so when it comes to us, our people have to have the honesty to accept, to admit that, yes, we were dealt a bad blow, but the blow that we were dealt entailed us joining a country that had gotten its independence, was a member of the United Nations and all of that. When you are joining them, unless you had agreed in advance that upon joining you, you put everything that you had before as your institutions, dissolve them, let us start afresh, right? Then they would have started negotiating things afresh. But that was not the paradigm. It was that you joined us, but we are going to, obviously, the fact of your joining us entails us making modifications in certain aspects of our existence. Number one, they had to adopt a new constitution. Okay? And if they are going to adopt a new constitution, you don't expect them to put their existing constitution away altogether and say, okay, now let's sit down and do a federal constitution. No. They proceed on the basis that, okay, it's a good thing, you voted to join us, but you know that at the time of joining us, this is our constitution. But we're going to make modifications to this constitution to take into account the fact that you have joined us. A big one of which was, we give up our sovereignty, we are no longer a sovereign Republic of Ghana, we become just a federated state. A big one was, our assembly simply becomes a regional assembly, not a national assembly, because you guys are bringing in your own regional assembly, etc., etc. So there are things that were done, taking into account the fact that you're not starting from zero. You're starting while these people already have their organ. Now, but let me touch on the way our own people conducted themselves in these things that we're talking about. Because when I heard the likes of the late Bolanjo Litumbe propound this theory of Njumba marriage, okay, I mean, it's laughable. I would say to be a lawyer is laughable. But then, the regrettable thing is that the more you keep pumping it, talking to people about it, the ordinary man in the street who understands just that language of Njumba marriage, they are carried away by it. But that's not what you are going to plead in an International Court of Justice tomorrow. It was to be a case, and so on. So, but this is what did our people do? And Carl is very conversant with all of this because he's written prolifically on it. Now, our people, well, let's start from a document which those who propound this Njumba marriage theory keep throwing out. United Nations General Assembly Resolution 1608. Now, 1608, in that resolution, the United Nations indicates clearly that it received the report of the Privacy Commissioner, that is satisfied that the people of Southern Cameroons voted freely, with full knowledge of the outcome of their decision, that they have voted in favor of joining La République. So now they call on the British government, the government of La République, and the government of Southern Cameroons to go and pursue the negotiations and complete. In other words, negotiations as to how to implement to give effect to the outcome, this decision of Southern Cameroons to join La République. How are you going to implement it? You guys go, 3 of you, go and discuss. But make sure that whatever discussions you are having, make sure that your things are concluded before the 1st of October 1961, because on that day, the trusteeship agreement between the United Nations and the United Kingdom over the territory of Southern Cameroons will end. Yes. So those 3 were said to go and do their homework. Now, when they went and did their homework, the outcome is what we eventually had on that constitution on 1st of October 1961. And there's a lot of misinformation about that. Number one, the idea that La République simply shoved the constitution in our nose. Well, as I said, they were not starting from zero. So they brought their constitution with proposals to make modifications to take account of our joining, and there was a debate, a discussion on that between the parties. Fumban, they did not leave Fumban with the constitution, because Fumban itself said there are going to be subsequent meetings, and there were subsequent meetings, in August and all of that. So another, if you like, misinformation that's been floating around is that okay, let me try to explain to you, at least as I understand it, this fact. It is a fact that on the 18th, no, on the 1st of September, 1961, the federal constitution was adopted by the Parliament of East Cameroon and voted as such, promulgated by Ahijo. But the expectation was that our own parliament would do the same, because the Federal Republic of Cameroon was to be born on the 1st of October 1961. It is not on that day that you will have a constitution being worked upon. The supposition was that the parties would work on the constitution, and that constitution would come into effect on the 1st of January, or 1st of October. Now, when the draft constitution was taken to our own people, you will find Carl referred to statements by people like parliamentary Motombi Weleta. What were they complaining about? The draft constitution was sent. Our people were supposed to discuss it in Buea, in Parliament. They met on the 18th of September, on the 18th of September, 1961. They met to discuss the draft constitution, the same way that the East Cameroon Assembly had discussed. But instead of discussing the draft constitution, listen to this, they instead tabled a motion in the House of Assembly in Buea for the House to congratulate
the conduct of the leaders of
the Foncha government for the manner in which they engaged with the Republic of Cameroon towards this union and so on and so forth. There were some dissenting minds there, like Motombi Weleta, which were put in the minority. But I want it to be very clear in the mind of our people, because we must stop this lies telling and casting blame. If we are responsible for what happened to us, we accept the responsibility. We don't try to shy away from it. So our people, the assembly, did not do its work. They had enough time to do so. And instead of examining clause by clause the draft that they received and eventually re-engaging with their own day, they were not satisfied with the outcome, they spent their time rather on a congratulatory motion to give Kitus to the
defended Yaoundé. So, Prof, so essentially we abdicated on our own responsibility to ratify that document in our own assembly. But if they brought their own constitution when we came together, did we have a constitution? Did we just go into this arrangement without a constitution?
We had.
So, did we also
the constitution that was applicable at that time?
Yes.
The Southern Cameroon Constitution
Yes.
of the Council. Yes.
The La Republic brought in their own constitution, and we came in because so far I've heard that they did some modification on their own constitution, ratified it in their House of Assembly, and then presented that to us. But I have not heard the other side of like our own people look at our own constitution and say we are doing this modification, and then you bring the two documents together and say, okay, we're going to reconcile this document.
That's a very good. That's a very good point. I think the approach of our people towards Fumban was lackadaisical. It was not business-like at all. Because you would have thought that they would have done exactly like you have said. So, okay, these people are come, this is our own constitution. Let's look at the two documents and see what we take from here, what we take from there, and so on, and what we can add or what we can subtract. That's the first thing they never did. That's the first failing. The second one is, as Simon has said, when this document was presented at the House of Assembly in Boya, they would have said, okay, we'll go article by article to see this. Does it even reflect the kind of thing we discussed at Fumban? If not, what do we accept, what do we reject, and so on? But again, it was never done. So the motion that was put is to say the way the leaders conducted negotiation towards unification, whatever thing it is. That was all it was. Now, in the face of that, I assume that the Republic authorities simply said, well, okay, we'll just go ahead. And they promulgated the document as the Federal Constitution of 1st September 1961. But I just want to go on to one or two things. I think Simon is very correct to insist that the British dealt us a very, very bad deal they did. And up to now, I still believe the British must take responsibility for the kind of thing that's happened to us. You will recall that at Manfred, our people agreed at Manfred because the question, what question should we put at the plebiscite? And in Manfred, they said there are two options. One is what do we call integration to Nigeria or secession from. It's amazing because even at that time they still use the word secession. Or seceding from Nigeria. That's what they said, and the British rejected that. Said no, we will not accept that, and imposed what eventually became what we all know. Second point I want to point out is that there was a pre-plebiscite meeting between a representative of French Cameroon and the Southern Cameroons, and there were certain undertakings that were given, primarily saying, well, even after this thing, each of the two countries will continue to govern themselves as they were, as they've been doing before, amongst other things. So the former meeting, which I've just referred to, but I just want to highlight the fact that this thing about the Northern Cameroons, many people don't know Northern Cameroon had two plebiscites. The first one was 1959, and the question was, do you want to join Nigeria, or do you want to postpone a decision on this matter? They voted to postpone the decision on that matter. Now, in 1961, where this common question was given for both of us, both sides, both parts of the trust territory, to join Nigeria or to join French Cameroon. And when the Northern Cameroons voted to join Nigeria, if you look at what the UN resolution said, and which was really reiterated by the exchange of letters between the Nigerian government and the UK government. The UK government said, we recognize henceforth that the Northern Cameroons is part of Nigeria, and as part of the northern region, this is what someone was saying, the northern region of Nigeria. This is quite very interesting, because it was not like the Northern Cameroon is part of Nigeria as such, but a part that itself was a part of Nigeria, which was very, very curious. And that's what Britain did. But the point I want to make is that Britain didn't do any similar thing with Cameroon regarding to say, I recognize the southern Cameroon as part of the French Cameroon. They didn't do that kind of a thing. So some of these things, although people will say, well, it's history, but the history is very, very important because some of these things. And because some of these things are quite hidden, like the note verbal from French Cameroon, which accepted and insisted that they accept this coming together between the southern Cameroons and French Cameroon on the basis of a federation. Records are there, they accepted that. So, all of this, in view of the fact that they were not all in the open, has created a lot of confusion in the minds of our people. But right now, as far as I'm concerned, it is clear to me exactly how these things have proceeded, how states conduct themselves in matters like this. And French Cameroon was insisting that a sovereign state had to conduct itself in a certain way. We had options. Our politicians had options. Even the plebiscite itself.
They could have forced the hand of the UN not to proceed.
Precisely. I've made this point myself. Yes. I say you're imposing on us. We do not agree. It don't happen this thing. If you don't want, first of all, they had said we should postpone to 72. They said no. Now they came and imposed conditions. They should have said, okay, we are not going to go to any vote. Tallies now with their topic of voting in French Cameroon. We're not going to go to any election. There's nothing anybody could have done about that. The British would not have forced it. The the UN would not have forced it. But our people, for some strange reason, I don't know why, they decided to compromise. So, and even at the other stage, even they could have still insisted that no, what we are saying here is not correct. We don't agree with this. But they never did.
So would that imply that our present argument about the incomplete decolonization really falls flat in its face? And then, secondly, are there any other examples of independence by joining? Because you need to now go back and look at, okay, how did this idea come about, independence by joining? Are there prior examples that the UN already implemented through this same experiment?
No.
And if they did that, were there a union treaty? Because the confusion is about there is no marriage certificate and all of that. Is that really necessary? So that our people need to have this clearly understood.
Yeah.
That, okay, somebody got married, there's no paper. Is that the federal constitution that became in default the marriage certificate?
Marriage certificate?
Yes.
The Federal Republic of Cameroon Constitution of 1st October 1961.
So that's what holds all together.
Yes.
Then that completely wipes out the argument about decolonization. It means that decolonization was complete.
The decolonization was complete. Decolonization means that the colonial authority left. The British left. They left.
Why don't forget that there are, sorry. Don't forget that it's not only La République and Southern Cameroons who are concerned in this matter. What has happened, or what is the status of the trusteeship agreement between the United Nations and the United Kingdom for the administration of British Cameroons today? What is the status?
Gone.
Gone. It's gone.
Gone.
So
Yeah.
why do you think that the United Nations and the United Kingdom ended the trusteeship agreement? It was because they took cognizance for them the validity of British Southern Cameroons acceding to independence by joining La République. So that's not something that we can go saying, oh, it was incomplete, you expect the UN and the UK to come back into this equation.
The argument is not that, I mean, we don't want to make a case, not that the British messed us up. But the argument is not that decolonization was incomplete. The argument is that they messed us up, which they did. Yeah. You see? The decolonization, which they did but it was not without blemish. So that's the argument. Not that they did, because if you say it's not incomplete, that if the British still have a foothold in the governance of the Southern Cameroons, no, they don't have. They've since left. And this is the point they keep on making each time you write to them. So we wash our hands since 1st October 1961, have nothing to do anymore Whatever is happening there, you fight a battle. We are no longer involved.
So
but the further argument we make is that you led us into a situation we
this.
found here.
Have there been other prior examples of independence by joining?
Not in the sense that of this Southern Cameroons, French Cameroons thing. But we have several examples. I mean, I think there was a total of about 11 trust territories within the United Nations trusteeship system. There were 11 territories. Now, at the last count, at least 7 of those attained independence by joining other territories, either after they got their own independence and subsequently, by subsequent negotiation, they joined another territory, as in the case of Zanzibar. Zanzibar and Tanganyika to form Tanzania. Zanzibar used to be a trust territory like us. British Togoland, which was a territory like us, is an integral part of Ghana today because they also had a plebiscite.
Is that Upper Volta? Is that the
whether it's a Volta state or what? But they had a similar plebiscite, and British Togoland opted to join Ghana, and they have been absorbed into Ghana. Papua and New Guinea.
Papua New Guinea.
So there are several examples of trust territories that joined other territories as part of the decolonization process.
I'm going to move to 1972, moving forward. I think I really wanted us to have that clarity as far as to what transpired. Like Dr. Munzu said, prior to 1961, then 1961 to 1962. What actually brought us into this situation? It looks like the 10-year experiment of the Federal Republic of Cameroon. Our people were okay with that.
There was no 10-year experiment.
From 1961 to 1972, that's 11 years or so. So, given that the core of this argument now is the abrogation of the 1961 Constitution in 1972. So why are we here? Can you people try to shed more light what transpired in 1972 and what prompted Ahijo and the regime in Yaoundé to move towards the complete abolition of the unitary, the two federated states into a unity state?
Okay, I can proceed. Remember when the unity state was declared, it is not as if it was accepted in total. There were a lot of rumors, opposition, because of course the consequences were dire for our people, and that what led to organizations. Our people had a choice. They could either have taken the gun at that time and started fighting, or they decided to fight politically. And I remember at a particular point it was decided that this battle must be fought politically, which eventually led to the formation of the SDF. And SDF was calling for a return to federation, a federal system, which of course was resisted. Nobody wanted to hear about that because they kept on saying, that's already the past. We look on to the future. But by refusing that, a situation was created whereby people begin to say, you don't listen to us. You do what you want to do. And you subject us to that. And what is even more, when we try to organize civil action, peaceful protests, you simply send in the military, and what they do is they brutalize people, they capture people, they torture them, and in some cases kill people. That is unacceptable. It is that situation that eventually led to the tripartite. And as we already indicated, led us to say, no, we must put the Southern Cameroon, the West Cameroon agenda on this whole thing. Because at that time too, people were already talking about, well, a constitution. And we said, whatever constitution is going to come out cannot ignore the people of the Southern Cameroons. So I led to that. But I think the tipping point then came. And I believe if, even within the unitary structure, it had been modified along the lines we had indicated. If Biya did not come out in 1984 with the document he did, what he did, which he then said, the United Republic of Cameroon is henceforth the Republic of Cameroon. You begin to ask yourself, why was it necessary for French Cameroon to come out and say the United Republic of Cameroon is the Republic of Cameroon? Remember, Biya took over power and swore to defend the United Republic of Cameroon. But in February 1984, he decided that no, that United Republic of Cameroon was no longer United Republic of Cameroon, it was simply Republic of Cameroon, and everybody knows what Republic of Cameroon was. So in other words, taking us back to the initial period when they attained independence, called United Republic of Cameroon. And then, and that's where the issue comes, we are simply an appendage now of that Republic of Cameroon. And that's when things got very, very bad from that point. And I think he made a strategic error. And I didn't see any reason why he had to do that. There was no compelling reason why he had to do that. And the moment he did that, all hell broke loose. There it came with Barrister Dinka, of course, who felt challenged that and said it was illegal for him to have done that. The rest, of course, is history. And we'll find ourselves where we are today.
But Dr. Muzu, I've been a little bit confused with what Prof is saying. From 1972 to 1984, our people demonstrated that they were uncomfortable with the movement towards the United Republic of Cameroon. And then in 1984, when Biya changed the name, so what exactly are we really fighting for? Is it the name change by Biya? Because when he changed the name, I don't think that he also changed what we had witnessed from 1972 to 1984. The significant thing that he did in 1984 was the name change. What is the difference between that name change and the conditions that our people were subjected to between 1972 to 1984?
It had legal and political implications.
Okay.
I think the fate of Cameroonians in general, but Southern Cameroonians in particular, since the establishment of the Federal Republic of Cameroon in 1961, has been that we are victim to the determination of leaders, the two presidents that we've had, to consolidate their power. Okay? Now, right from the beginning, before unification, Ahidjo, having emerged as president of the Republic of Cameroon, in the circumstances that we know, with the Maquisard War raging and his authority being challenged and so on and so forth, he saw the need to do everything to consolidate his power. And that made him turn into, take his administration to take an autocratic turn. The legislation of those draconian anti-terrorism laws in 1962, limiting liberty of movement, introducing laissez-passer and all sorts of things. The opening of political prison centers in Matom, Chilore, and so on. So there's absolutely no doubt that Ahidjo inaugurated his presidency of the Republic of Cameroon as an autocrat. Okay? Now comes October of 1961, and this other territory joins his own, bringing along with it a culture of democracy.
That's right.
Freedom of speech, questioning.
Yes.
The papers will write against you, they will open a commission of inquiry against people in Buea, and so on and so forth. There was a great contrast there between the Ahidjo and the
two systems.
And Ahidjo, if he was to continue, would definitely have to do something about this system. Because the two couldn't, because his citizens, the citizens of the Federated State of East Cameroon, living under this repression, this repressive regime, were always drawing parallels with what they were observing about their supposed compatriots in the English-speaking part. So Ahidjo had to do something, and what he chose to do was to, reduce the authority of and specificity, and ultimately, the self-governance of
the Southern Cameroons.
And how did he do it? I mean, he was, unlike President Biya, who came to politics as a technocrat. Mr. Biya is not a politician. A politician is someone who you go to your constituency, you win an election to serve on a council or to serve in parliament, and it gives you a sense that you owe your authority to the people, and you keep coming back to them. But Mr. Biya, unfortunately for Cameroon, came to politics as an autocrat, someone who was appointed, in a way, appointed to the presidency. As he had been
Indeed,
appointed Prime Minister.
he was appointed. Yeah, that's true.
And that's what it has been till now. But Ahidjo at least started as a grassroots politician, a constituency politician. So he knew something about the weight of constituencies, and he saw how that played in the Southern Cameroons. Because in the Southern Cameroons, our politicians knew the weight of
the people.
So he took his time. Right from the beginning, he must have decided right from the beginning that this federal thing is just a short-time experiment.
It's not going to work.
Yeah, but I'm going to dismantle that thing, but do it step by step. And he did it step by step. First, to have his own direct line of reporting of what is happening in the federal state of West Cameroon, he appointed a federal inspector. Okay? A federal inspector of administration was appointed to represent the federal government in Buea, thus giving the federal president a direct line of communication of things concerning to him, number one. Subsequently, he came up with this idea of having a single
assembly,
a single party, one party state. Which to sugarcoat it, he said, il ne s'agit pas d'un parti unique, il s'agit d'un parti unifié, which invited all political parties to come together and form one party. Now, for East Cameroon, that meant just the UC, his party, the UC, because by the time that they got to 1966, Ahidjo had managed to ban the UPC, get other political parties, render them into the bloc Cameroonese and all of that.
Oblivion,
yeah. So the only other force, political force that existed, was the political parties that were vying against each other in West Cameroon, the KNDP, the CPNC, and the One Cameroon, and all of that. So if he could bring them all to join him and form this so-called Parti Unifié, of which he would be the president, and that's exactly what he did. He managed to convince, once again, the weakness of our own people and their lack of foresight.
Exactly.
Because there's no reason why they should allow their interpersonal rivalries to lead them to
interfere. Yeah, that's correct.
To accept this that he proposed. So come 1st September 1966, Ahidjo obtains the creation of the CNU, and he emerges as the national president, with Foncha as first vice president.
But would that be a coincidence that, because some have argued and very strongly that not only was Ahidjo trying to consolidate his own political power, but the discovery of oil in 1972 was one of the reasons why the French moved to get Ahidjo do the referendum to squash the federated state, to take away that power from the Southern Cameroons. So we can as well argue that in as much as our people were not as sophisticated as the people in East Cameroon, because we really had no foreign backing, what the French juggernaut that was behind Ahidjo. So it is difficult to completely dismiss the economic aspect of discovering
oil in the territory of Southern Cameroon?
That's an excuse. It's not an explanation. You're making an excuse for our people. Maybe it's a valid one. But what Ahidjo did in 1972, of course, did not begin in 1972. Even the oil that you're talking about, the oil was not discovered in 1972.
Yeah, before.
It was long before. He knew it was there.
Yeah.
But his fear was, how do I exploit this oil in such a way that the government of West Cameroon, where the oil is, are not paramount in
in the decision making?
Yes.
So he took his steps. So that's that first step. Once he had convinced everybody else to create this one party with him, with our people being very happy to accept office, Foncha as vice president, so as secretary of this and secretary of that in the central committee of the CNU. First consequence, Southern Cameroons now has no political base.
Exactly.
No Southern Cameroonian politician has a political base now, because the only political forum is dominated by Mr. Ahidjo. Okay, so having achieved that, the next thing now is he goes on to appoint someone favorable to him in 1968 as Prime Minister of West Cameroon. Mr. Muna to replace A.N. Jua, favorable to him. You know, and there again, people emotionally tell this lie about how Ahidjo did that illegally. No. It turns out that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Cameroon gave the president the authority to appoint prime ministers. The only thing is that, taking into account the fact that we had that vibrant democracy in our own parliament in Buea, the first time that he appointed Jua, he consulted the West Cameroon House of Assembly.
Yes, as a member of the West Cameroon Assembly, yes.
He could not do otherwise. He knew how our system operates. So he consulted the West Cameroon House of Assembly, and they all indicated, as Foncha was moving to Yaoundé, that it would be Jua, and that passed. But by 1968, with a one-party system, no West Cameroon House of Assembly as such, for him, he went on to designate Muna. There was no
so essentially, the albatross of our sufferings stems from Ahidjo's mutilation of the federal constitution. Is that essentially what we are saying here?
Yeah.
Because we might not settle the whole blame on BI alone, so this started with Ahidjo carefully and calculated manner began dismantling the federal
yes.
Don't forget that during this period he was very close to Ahidjo, that's Bia, as Secretary General at the presidency, and before that, so I mean, he was not innocent. Given
it was part and parcel of all the arrangement. He was all involved in that.
And our people need to understand these things.
I think that is why this conversation was very necessary to have the two of you, not only with the legal background, but having lived through this time and have a proper understanding on how these things turn out in our own area of the country. But now a lot of our people live in this nostalgia that let's go back to the 1972 where things started falling apart. It's not like some of us are young. We did not live from 1961 to 1972 to see the good things that were during the federated territory. What is it that is so unique during that period that our people are saying, let's go back there? Or maybe it's just saying, let's go back to the beginning and see how we can fix this problem. And then you have the people who are saying, this relationship is not going to work. It is better that we each go our separate ways, based on the experiences that we've had in this union from 1961 through the present moment. Prof.
No, I think part of it Simon has already answered. the existence of the Southern Cameroon and strong institutions and democracy there was really a threat to French Cameroon. I think there was an American author who came, studied the situation and said, people are talking about majority and minority, and that the people of West Cameroon are necessarily going to align with the majority of French Cameroon. But his study shows that it might even be the reverse. And why did he say so? He said because these are people who have a culture of democracy. These are people who have a culture of autonomy. Even while in Nigeria, no matter how limited it may have been, some autonomy. These are people who have a concept of self-help, know how to help themselves. These are people who are open and they talk, they speak out their mind, and they are not afraid. So what he was saying is, the people in French Cameroon, looking at what is happening in the Southern Cameroons, would say, look, why can't we be like those people? And we have some examples of people who were put on trial in French Cameroon and who insisted that they ought to be tried in West Cameroon. That tells a lot. That tells a lot. And I have one or two of them who, in protest of what was happening in French Cameroon, moved up to leave, if they voted with their feet, so to speak, build a house. I know one very well, the Professor Chuyang in Bamenda. He says he's sick and tired. Everybody knows about this author, it's just going to my mind, the French Cameroon author who lived in Paris, what's his name again? Mongo Betty. Yes. Who spent his time saying that French Cameroon people must see what is happening on that side, and that's a way to go on that side, not what is happening here. So, you see, the fear that at the end of the day, the osmosis was not going to be as people thought, because the majority was going to be the minority absorbing the majority. And this fear sparked, and this fear meant that the political authorities in Yaoundé, and even the French themselves, were really very, very afraid. And if they were afraid, what did they have to do? They have to destroy that system so that it doesn't exist. So they don't continue to show what they consider as a bad example to their own people. And in a sense, this has been proven. Because you see, each time there's something to challenge the authorities there legitimately, it has always been the people of Southern Cameroon, West Cameroon, and who have done that. If you take that way back in all the uprisings, the protests, going right back on the days of the SDF or even before, during elections with ghost towns, the recent one with lawyers and so on, it's always been our people who have been doing that. So you can see the fear, and because of that fear, they felt it was necessary to suppress all of that. Because you're showing a very bad example. And that's what has been happening over the years, under Ahijo and under Biya. It is telling that Biya openly admitted, you recall, he openly admitted that they've been doing everything they possibly can to assimilate. Of course, the word assimilation, which he used, was a very nice word which he used, but actually it's something more than just assimilating.
It's an integration.
But he himself confessed that they failed. But failing means that it doesn't mean that they have stopped trying.
So what have we done? I think 1993, 94, the ACC 1, ACC 2. What have been some of the steps that have been taken by our people to try to resist a lot of these changes that were brought upon us by La République du Cameroon?
Well, I mean, we've, depending upon the moment, actions have been, actions of resistance have been taken, some big, some small, but effective. You've mentioned the two all-Anglophone conferences, Buea and Bamenda. But on a smaller scale, in terms of bringing people together in one place, the Anglophone Cameroonians, Southern Cameroonians, if you like, fought and won the battle to have a GCE board. And that may not be as insignificant as some people may want to portray it, because it was a very here we were in a situation where the West Cameroon education system, when it came to GCE, the GCE was administered by London University, you know, with all the credibility that went with that, you know. And then this was of course under the framework of a British cooperation with Cameroon, but there came a point when the British decided to end that cooperation. And what happened? The GCE was handed to the Ministry of Education with the usual disorganization and corruption and everything. I mean, West Cameroonians were so unhappy about the GCE being administered by the government of Cameroon through the Ministry of Education. And they decided, no, this must not be. We have to create our own GCE board, which will function the way that the London University board has been functioning in conducting these exams. And when the minister of the time, I think was Mbela Mbappe, Robert Mbela Mbappe, tried to use the usual high-handed manner of brutalizing people and so on, we saw what happened. We were teaching at the University of Yaoundé at the time, both of us. We saw what happened, the way we mobilized, went to the street. They pumped us with water cannons and all of that, but to cut a long story short, at the end of the day, the GCE fight, which was initiated and conducted very adeptly by TAC, you know, Azonwara and co, we won the day. We won the day. But again, in order not to make it appear as if they created the Office de Baccalaureate. No problem, you guys keep it. Now, a second example that I can cite is when one fine day they got up and said they passed an issued an order that in West Cameroon, in our two regions, we have to go and introduce a two-shift working day. Because they used to get up, go to the office at about 7:38 in the East Cameroon. They work. 12 o'clock, they go home, eat, drink wine and everything, then come back to the office at 2:30 for a second shift.
They're still doing that now.
They're still doing that now. Whereas our own people, they go to the office at 7:38, work through.
I'm trying to cover a lot of this. But Dr. Munzu, given all of the pushback that our people have done, what was it so bad in 1993, 94 that prompted the ACC 1 and ACC 2? Because until our people get to understand that the situation was so bad, that prompted the people of your generation to hold these conferences to articulate exactly our own present plight at that time. And I think during that conference, the Bamenda Declaration that I think you read part of it, some people call it the time-bound document, that we were going to give the government in Yaoundé a certain amount of time to engage in an inclusive and meaningful dialogue with the people of Southern Cameroon to address some of the issues that were raised during these conferences. So far, up to this moment, some people hold you that you were one of those individuals who wavered from that time-bound document, that this is exactly what we presented to the government in Yaoundé as far as the plight of the Southern Cameroons is concerned. If I may quickly read that. So you said, in light of the foregoing, Anglophone people of Cameroon meeting in Bamenda at the second Anglophone conference solemnly adopt and issue the following proclamation. Should the government either persist in its refusal to engage in meaningful constitutional talks or fail to engage in such talks within a reasonable time, the Anglophone Council, which I think you and Prof were part of, shall so inform the Anglophone people by all suitable means. It shall thereupon proclaim the revival of the independence and sovereignty of the Anglophone territory of the Southern Cameroons and take all measures necessary to secure, defend, and preserve the independence, sovereignty, and integrity of the said territory. the point 7, that following the proclamation of the revival of the independence and sovereignty of Southern Cameroons as provided for here above, the Anglophone Council shall, without having to convene another session of the All Anglophone Conference, transform itself into the Southern Cameroons Constituent Assembly for the purpose of drafting, debating, and adopting a constitution for the independence and sovereign state of Southern Cameroons. The question that our people are asking, that since 1993-94, after the time-bound document, a lot of efforts have been made to engage the government for an inclusive dialogue to resolve this issue. I think Prof pointed the SDF from the 90s calling for a federated state. Even up to 2016, after the present outbreak of the consciousness, you had the efforts, Swiss talks, you had the efforts with the Canadian pre-talks, you had the South African president, former president Thabo Mbeki coming out and saying that the government is the one that is intransigent and does not in any way believe in any inclusive dialogue. What is the fallback position of the people of Southern Cameroons?
Well, let me take this opportunity to clarify the points that you made there concerning me in particular. You know, it's necessary for us to, when you say what happened in 1993, 1994, for us to have convened the, listen, many things that happen in this life are unplanned, but when you see an opportunity, you seize it. And you'll be surprised to find what you can achieve by having seized that opportunity than if you had even planned. You know. Now, we, Carlson sitting by me here, and I, and a contact Elad, happened to have found ourselves attending the tripartite conference that was convened by the government of Cameroon in, I think, November of 1993, I think. Or is it 92 now? 93?
93.
93, right. So, Carlson was a founding member. You guys have a name for it.
SDF.
Of the SDF.
Yes.
But he attended that conference by some magic as an independent. Tripartite, the three parties were the government, independent personalities, and political parties, all political parties, including the CPDM. You know, so Carl attended as an independent. I attended a conference as part of the CPDM delegation because at the time I was National Secretary for Economic and Social Affairs of the Central Committee of the CPDM. And Barrister Elad attended as part of the delegation of Molan John Itumbe's Liberal Democratic Party.
Yes.
Okay? So when the convening of that tripartite had nothing to do with Southern Cameroon's question. It had to do with Mr. Biya trying to diffuse the tensions that were created in the political environment of the time, nationwide. Okay? But during the proceedings, time after time, Southern Cameroonians, regardless of their political party or being in government or whatever, who were called up to speak, when they went to the rostrum, whatever it is that they went to say initially, they always ended up including an expression of discontent with what is happening to Southern Cameroons. You follow? So when at the end of the session, the conference decided to set up a technical committee to draft a new constitution. They now went on to designate or elect people to that committee. Okay? Let me make very clear that, as far as I'm concerned, the committee initially was to be 9 members. 3 government, 3 independent, 3 parties. Now, For the independent, Carlson managed to get himself in there.
Yes, well, it shows it was.
Independent, not SDF, independent.
Yes.
For government, they put Mr. Benjamin Eto'o. Yes. For
was he the justice minister then?
yes,
Yes.
He was a minister.
Yeah, minister, not justice. Yeah, minister. Yeah.
So he that was that. Then for political parties, it was So, but no, for political parties, it was for the CPDM, it was Mr. Professor Njomwele, who was Secretary General of the party at the time. So when they saw this, Molan John Itumbe is one who got up and said, no, this thing, how can they have all the three representatives of political parties are francophone.
Yes.
There has to be an anglophone in there. All right. So with that, John conferred amongst us of the CPDM delegation and decided that he would step down for me to represent the CPDM. Okay. So this was announced, and this was communicated to Mr. The Prime Minister who was chairing the conference, Sadio Ayatu, and he announced. But after he announced that, Molan John Itumbe still got up and said that, okay, I don't doubt the credentials of Dr. Munzu, blah, 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 but we prefer that the representative of political parties should be the opposition parties should be anglophone also. And so again, Mr. Ayatu was in very accommodating mood. He agreed, and that's how Molan John Itumbe quickly designated one of his party members, Barrister Ellard, to join. So we had, the committee was taken from 9 initially to 11 to accommodate these additional requirements. So you had a committee of 11, 4 anglophone, 7 francophone.
Yeah.
Okay? And when we went there, in our deliberations, the 4 of us, especially 3, Carlson, myself, and I mean, for Mr. Eto'o, we could understand the member of government, kept pushing the Southern Cameroon's agenda. We kept reminding our francophone colleagues that on the floor of the debate, many people raise this issue. So we have to acknowledge that there is a malaise of anglophones, and we have to address that. We have to take the opportunity of this new constitution to address that. And we believe that the format that the constitution should take, the new form of the state to address this, should be a return to federation. And predictably, they did not take that in committee. And that is why we decided, okay, this matter has to be examined outside this committee. So I say that, when I hear people say that I backed out, some say I was bribed, some say that it's Mr. Biya who for me gave me a job at the United Nations, I chopped soya, I paid payback time and all of that. I just laugh. I just laugh because, to begin with, the Cameroonian government had absolutely nothing to do, and I'm looking at them and saying, so if anybody thinks I'm lying, absolutely nothing to do with my UN career at any stage of it, from joining as a UN volunteer to retiring as an Assistant Secretary General. The Cameroon government had absolutely nothing to do with it. But my detractors, especially the separatists, have constantly pumped this lie but I had to keep my eye on the ball and continue to fight for the right things. So that's the background. It is not as if we went there holding, but then that's what I was saying. Now here then is the opportunity.
Yeah,
we saw an opportunity, we seized it. The Southern Cameroon people came behind us with it, and we did what we did. Now in this new dispensation, what hurts is that the young people who are aspiring to be leading and all of that, I mean, how much consultation do they do? How do they articulate the grievance? What is the main grievance that they're articulating? How do they want to prosecute it? If it is independence by war, how are they organizing to win a war of independence? We don't see any of that. And when you try to point it out to them, you become a blackleg.
But to you, what is, because we've tried everything, except you saying that all the litany of things that we have tried so far, the government has not moved so far to actually resolve the root cause. I don't know what, from my own position, I know what the root cause is, but most people seem to have difficulties to actually identify the root cause of this whole crisis. Now, some have argued that the government has shown a complete disregard when it comes to genuine engagement, which you have carefully also articulated. The government has not been open to really embracing dialogue. It leaves the people with one solution, to fight back. We find ourselves in this situation. Prof, what exactly do you think is our way out of this situation?
I see no other way out. To continue the resistance. That's the way out. When you are boxed to a corner, what else do? You have to fight back. I don't think we have a choice in that. Cameroon is a typical terrorist state. It doesn't leave room for some gentlemanly thing like, okay, let's talk, let's sit down here and do everything, I know, in a very pacific manner. It isn't. Throughout all, for the past half a century, it has shown that for it, force is what counts. Terror is what counts. And it set up a whole institution to terrorize people. Everybody knows what SED does. It's officialized. But yet nobody says anything. People are terrorized, killed, and so on. It comes from the news media. People read it, oh, well, and that is it. Wait for the next victim to be taken. So in the face of that kind of a situation, there is really no other option. If we're dealing with a civilized government, civilized society, where you can say, okay, and a civilized government would long ago have said, look, this whole thing, I must try some other thing, some other initiative, do some other thing. But this is not that kind of a government. And in the face of that, we have no other choice but to fight back. Fight back and offer them the opportunity to exterminate us if that is what they want. And then we see. But I must have noticed that these things have an uncanny way of rebounding. If anybody had told the British that pushing this agenda of northern Nigeria joining, northern Cameroon joining Nigeria going to backfire, nobody would have believed it. I understand. Boko Haram right now is essentially what we now call, what used to be called from the former British Northern Cameroons. So these things have a way of turning around. So likewise, in like manner, by resisting change, by not trying to accommodate the kind of things we're talking, and thinking that this thing will resolve itself, it's not going to happen. You really harden people's minds. You make people more resolved, and technologies are available nowadays, and things might not go the way they think. So in the face of all of this, I say, resist. Look at what is happening in the Middle East with the Palestinians and Hamas. Look at what is going.
I'm definitely going to come there, Prof. Dr. Muzu, to just dovetail with what he is saying. If you look at it, it's convenient for a lot of people to easily point to the separatists, like you call them, that they have resorted to kidnappings, intimidation, and outright terrorism. But it's hard for us to deny that the government created that vacuum for these vices to take place. People do not hold the government as a sovereign state for the depravity in burning down almost 200 to 300 villages per Bala and his Human Rights Watch, the abduction of people from the English-speaking country and moving them to kangaroo courts in Yaoundé. And then it makes it very, very difficult for you to reconcile that, okay, it is the separatists who do not have a plan. What is the plan of the government, if at all they have one, to resolve this crisis after 8 years of us being in this quagmire?
Let me backtrack a little bit you read an excerpt of the
Bamenda Proclamation.
At one point he said, I read part of it. I didn't read part of it, I read all of it.
Okay.
I read all of it at the conference. But people should understand this. Historical facts need to be understood. Even before we convened the All Anglophone Conference in Buea in April of 1993, there were many tendencies within the southern Cameroonian population with regard to our relationship with La République. And there were those who were already calling at that time for separation. We restore our independence. There are those who were in favor of staying in it as it is. There are those who were in favor of going back to federalism and all of that. So these tendencies in the Anglophone community are not new. And one of the successes of the AAC was that we were able to bring all those tendencies together within the Anglophone National Council. And you should have been at each of our meetings, whether in Bamenda and Buea, how heated debates were. But at the end of the day, we arrived at a consensus position that became the official position of the SCNC going forward. You know. And so in that context, when we met in Bamenda for AAC2, yes, of course, there were people who said, we have already, this past year since AAC1, we have sent petitions, addressed memoranda, and all of that to the government. As usual, they've kept a deaf ear, and so we think that the time has come to proclaim the independence of southern Cameroons right here. Okay? And there were others more guarded, and I was among the more guarded, you know, less radical, if you will, who said, listen, I mean, we're dealing with a rogue government, but this is a government that gives a deaf ear to practically everything that Cameroonians, not just Anglophones, but Cameroonians, everything that they've ever complained about, this government does not pay attention. So let's give them more time. Let's see what will happen. And so that resolution was a compromise between those who wanted us to declare independence there and then, and those who said, well, let's give this government a little more time and see what happens. And if you read the wording, it attempts to incorporate both. So I have no regrets, no qualms. It was my role as spokesperson. I read the resolution. But I have seen people throw it at me so many times. But that was the background. Now,
yeah, the reason people throw that at you, let me hold you to that thought. The reason people throw that back at you is because from what you've just presented, it means there were two options. The people who wanted independence then and the people who wanted independence to be delayed.
Ultimately, yes.
Which means you fell within one of those two positions.
Yes, I did.
So, from the beginning, you have been an independentist.
No.
If there were two positions in 1994 to declare independence then, and there was another position saying no, we should not do it now, which was your position, which means you are in that school of thought that ultimately we have to declare independence.
No, I mean you're saying the same thing. You cannot you're citing only one side there. There's no real alternative. Declare independence, then, at that point, there were those who were against it, and I was, for several reasons. First, because fundamentally, I did not question, and I demonstrated that again at this platform, I did not question the authenticity of our joining these people in the circumstances that we described. Secondly, I did not think that there would be any point in declaring independence when you don't have what it takes to defend it.
Would that not be the argument of the British? Would that not be the argument of the British that we were not economically because that I'm seeing the argument going in the line of in 1994 that the two positions that you've said,
Yeah.
but there are people just the same way in 1961 there were people also who said there should be a third option.
Yes.
You are not telling us that there were just two options. They did not give an opportunity for a third option to say we don't even want the independence. Let's sit here with this unity state.
No, the ones who didn't want the independence, in other words, what you would call today the unionists or unitarists
Yes.
or whatever, they didn't need to make any statement. they were not changing anything.
Okay.
You follow? I mean, maintaining the status quo, you don't need to declare it. It's there. So what needed the novelty was you go for independence, or you say, well, let's continue this experiment and see where it leads. Okay, so if and so that was the background to this. Now, if someone were to tell me today that a point came where people decided that period of waiting has ended, they are now ready to declare independence, and they held meetings where they decided to do so. Well, I would like to see, because that resolution indicates step by step what was to be done. Mm-hmm. Okay? Step by step what was to be done. Now, if pursuant to that resolution, those who came to the conclusion that time is over, let's go to the next step, had indicated that they followed the steps enunciated in this resolution, I would feel bound by it. But they did not. A number of adventurers simply decided, without much consultation, without much planning, without anything, that the time has come to fight a war of independence. Now, resistance is legitimate, but resistance can be violent. It can be peaceful also. Everything has to be the outcome of discussion amongst a people. You don't get one group of people go out and dictate to the rest that the time has now come for this.
Prof, let me hold him back to that question. Essentially, he's saying you are one of those adventurers who decided that the time has come for us to declare independence. And if I am going to go with this argument that there was a particular time that you were going to have people sit together, maybe a constituent assembly per ACC 1 and 2, is equally the people for the governing council, the consortium, can also argue strongly that they constituted themselves together, and a call was made in September the 30th that brought our people out in their numbers. That even gives them more substance than the ACC 1 and 2. Given that there are series of meetings that they held, conclave 1, conclave 2, I don't know whether you completely forgot about those conclaves. They can also, because there are people from the southern Cameroons, argue that they had the mandate of the people. Maybe they did not consult you, but they constituted themselves as southern Cameroonians and made this strong argument by calling the people out that we want to get your blessing for this effort that we're going to put out, and they ended up with the proclamation of independence. Because if you argue that they do not have the sovereign will of the people, they can also argue that the ACC 1 and ACC 2 cannot in any shape and form claim that they have the sovereign will of the people. Prof.
Yeah, I think we must look at this in historical perspective. It is not as if somebody got up one fine day and decided that we are now going to fight a war of independence. What happened after the loyal protest, joined by civil society and other organizations? The regime decided to use force to suppress them, and they used force to suppress them. People were injured, people were killed. The different constituencies that were involved, the lawyers, the civil society that considered themselves into a consortium, I think, and all of these guys became objects of pursuit by the regime. And all of a sudden, there was a flight to exile by all of these people, or at least the leadership of all of these people. And they went out in exile. But they still kept in touch with their base, either with the lawyers or with civil society and others. So there were groups, the leadership of different groups that were. And as that was happening, the regime continued with its repression. One of the ministers declared that, what have you even got? You got nothing. We'll deal with it in 2 weeks' time. The army would have done its job. Here is a regime that decides, but although that's not the first time it's using the military against those it claims to be its own people. And as the repression intensified after September, when there was a mass number of people that came out in protest, what was happening was that led to a certain particular situation where the military then started shooting, killing people, and there came out, you know, that was in November 2017, right? If I'm not mistaken the dates. Oh, yeah. And said the army was going to do its job. What job was the army supposed to do, or set out or others instructed to do? The army's job at that moment was to kill as much as possible. Why? So as to terrorize the population, that never again should they ever raise their head in protest against whatever thing was being done. At that time, when the killing did not cease, when the army relapsed into burning of villages and so on, young people in their community rose up with whatever they had to fight back. Sticks or stones or rubber gun, as I saw in Bamenda, or the from gun, then guns, and so on, to fight back against a professional army, well equipped, well trained, fighting essentially civilians who were empty-handed, absolutely had nothing at all. So the situation is not like the classic situation or liberation movements, where a liberation movement decides to say, okay, we've had enough. I think the next thing to do now is to declare war of resistance. After they would have consulted, got the guns, got where this in, got some basic training, and then launched this in. That's not what happened. And it could never even have happened because the opportunity was not even there. It was a sudden thing which took the community really by surprise. And by acting the way they acted, it's a classic case of self-defense. Civilians, the military going out, you're killing civilians. You are burning down their villages. To what purpose? To what end? So, if it was a classic situation, I would agree that perhaps the classic situation would have merited that, well, let's convene some large conference to debate the issue, the desirability of launching an armed struggle now or none. But at that point even, it was not even well indicated to launch an armed struggle, even if people had been consulted. This was simply a popular reaction of people. And that having been initiated, there was no question of going back. And I think the rest is history.
But Prof, if you're arguing that, what about the conclaves? What about the conclave 1 in Nigeria, conclave 2 from the consortium? Because his argument is there was no authority to anyone, because this present group or generation of leaders did not go back to follow through with some of the recommendations of AAC 1 and 2, meaning that they did not talk to the people to say, okay, we gave you that authority to go out. Your argument is maybe the opportunity did not present itself given the way things were moving so fast with government. Bia saying that I now understand that there are enemies of the state, I'm going to go after them. Before even the formation of the government, how many of these meetings were held? Can you qualify these meetings as given the so-called adventurers, like, if I may use his word, the authority to declare independence for the people of Southern Cameroon?
No, there are two things there. The one is fighting, and the other thing is independent declaration. I was talking about the fighting as a form of resistance. It was never declared by anybody, even in the conclaves I'm mentioning, that people should go out now and fight. They couldn't even have done that, because you ask them, which people, you ask them to go and fight. There was no army, there were no guns, there were no weapons. Now, the second aspect of getting the people's opinion or view before actually declaring independence, the different groups that were, as I said, people that escaped abroad, essentially to Nigeria, which is next door, much more easier. The different groups that came, representing the different constituencies that were or are in the southern Cameroons, spoke on behalf of these different groups. And all of them. And that's where the conclave thing came. And that's why the conclave thing delayed. Because this whole thing was debated at conclave 1, was debated at conclave 2. I was at the fourth conclave that was agreed that given the particular circumstance, what was happening, there should be a formal declaration. And I said it's a formal declaration because that was not the first time declarations of independence. I mean, there have been previous ones. Not one, not two, not even three. But this one we just came to add another one. To add urgency to the moment. And to add momentum to what was just going on. To give the people, say, okay, you are resisting, you are fighting for something which you think you can look forward to. And those are the two aspects I was referring to. Not, of course, but even there was not, in our situation in 1993 and 4, where we could go around, peaceful around the different parts and so on, and canvass these views. And in 2016, 2017, it was practically impossible. There was just no way. I don't see a group of people saying themselves that they are going around a consultative meeting throughout the whole country to ask views of people to say, do you want us to declare independence? Do you want to declare independence?
The government will not even allow you to do that.
That's what I'm saying. There comes a time when sometimes, without necessarily popular view, a group of people, and it has happened throughout history, take certain responsibilities and do certain things. Whether it is wrong or whether it is right, only history will tell.
I think I've heard both of you for too long. We have 3 more.
You're tired of us.
No, I'm not tired of you. We have 3 more questions. So go ahead.
Let me jump in on this one. I'm glad that Carl has mentioned it, because this thing of October 2017
yes.
was not the first time that people have declared the revival.
I know of the restoration government, I know about that.
Yeah. So, because some went right to the radio and declared
That's right.
that did not bring anything. So just proclaiming like that, it has no real significance. It hasn't happened for the past 3 times, it would happen the 4th time. But more to the point is...
So why was this special? Why was this one special?
Okay, what was special about it? There is absolutely no doubt. I say everywhere and anywhere that if you were to conduct a plebiscite in the southern Cameroons today, the population, and ask the question simply, do you want to continue in the union with La Republic, or do you want independence? 99.9% will say want independence, and that 99% would include Simon Munzu.
Is it true?
Okay? So there's nothing to debate about that. The reality, however, is that scenario is far-fetched. And I would want to build my options on illusion. As simple as that. Now, when we come to that October 1st, 2017, I believe. Yeah. Before that, there was this social media hype using new technology, right? About how glorious the southern Cameroons was going to be. All this Buea will become New York. Widikum will become Amsterdam, and O'Shea will become.
I don't know. Will become Washington D.C.
Will become. No. So there was that number one, and people believed it. People believed it. But what was even more, if you like, more regrettable is that these so-called, and I'm using my words carefully, these so-called leaders pumped these messages to our people that they were going to be in Buea
yes.
on that day.
That was the wrong one.
And people believed it. So in the minds of our people, these jokers were going to be in Buea because we independent don't come. The United Nations don't come. But the UN the pass, they show number. They start that UN, they don't come to we independent. That was the propaganda that was carelessly and irresponsibly put out there. And raised the hopes of our people and got them geared up. And they came to Buea in the masses. But they didn't come to Buea so someone should rely on that later on and say we declared independence. They came to Buea because they said they were told that they were coming to meet their leaders in this new country. The propaganda even said that Monday, the following Monday, was going to be the first working day of the government of Ambazonia in Buea. Come on.
Well, but Doc, I think it would be unfair to the separatists for you to take what happened within the social media from disparate elements across the globe. People with a phone and a microphone became spokesperson for that. Does not in any way mean that they are presenting them. Because if you're arguing that, you can as well argue now that somebody like Capo Dene is speaking on your behalf because he has a microphone.
We're talking about the turnout. We're trying to explain. Because they capitalize on that and say, you know, the population of southern Cameroons came out in mass.
No, the declaration was on the 30th of September. The mass turnout was on the 1st. So the declaration that Sissoko Ayotabo made was on September the 30th.
Yes.
Not even the 1st.
Yeah, but
because the first was people coming to actualize
exactly.
the 30th.
It is that actualization of the 30th that people were coming to because they had been told that it was going to be actualized. You know, if you take my comments, all the comments that I've made in interviews or whatever panels like this, you wouldn't find a single instance where I made a statement condemning the separatists for going the way they did. I don't approve their methods. I don't approve what appears to me to be the lack of strategic planning, including turning on our people now, even though they may say legitimately or otherwise that it is not them. The whole thing has become a rogue thing. The rogue elements are doing what they're doing. But in spite of that, you wouldn't detect me anywhere having condemned them. Why? Why? Because I am aware of how much
people have put into
we did in terms of engaging with this government peacefully. Resolution after resolution, petition after petition, this and that. And of course, yes, there comes a point where a people's patience runs out. However, if your patience runs out and you decide that you're going to go to the next level, take time to prepare for that level.
Absolutely, I think that you make a point. That's Prof, I not to belabor the points, I am going to now come back to what do we do now? What exactly do we do now? The separatists, if we might call them that, are saying that independence or nothing, we're going to fight it out. The federalists are saying, okay, we can still resolve this problem within the construct of Cameroon. So what exactly are the two of you telling our people? I know you are in the school of thought that the history of these people have demonstrated that we cannot really have anything to do with them. Are you, Dr. Munzo, you're saying, okay, we can still explore avenues to resolve this problem internally? Meaning that for the two of you that our people look up to, you are on two different sides of this argument. And that is where I was coming about the lack of leadership. And the vacuum has been created because of people like you who are really credible people that even if the international community is going to engage in any substantive dialogue, they have to look for people like you. But if you look at the whole ecosystem of the struggle now, you cannot really pinpoint that this is our position. This is what we are talking about. We cannot just continue to keep saying we're going to fight it out or we should go to negotiation, because when you go to a negotiation, you have to move your positions. So my question to the two of you, what are you telling our people? If we go to a negotiation, for you, the people who argue about complete separation, are we willing to move our position or we are not willing to move our position? If that's the case, what is the essence of going to a negotiation when you are not willing to move your position? For the federalists, the government has not as well as much shown any interest to talk about returning back to the 1972 federation, because if you are politically savvy, they understand that a federation is as good as complete separation. They know that that is just a way to look for the back door to be separated. So what are you people advising our people to do now?
You want me to go first?
Go first.
Yeah. You talk about moving positions in negotiation. If I thought that there was a viable alternative to what's going on now, I would subscribe to it. I've searched my mind. I've looked at other situations throughout history to see exactly what happened. And I've also considered French Cameroon, its very nature and its very character. And believe you me, I don't see any possibility of any accommodation with French Cameroon. Now, you talk about moving position for negotiation. We've tried negotiation before. You are saying that for someone like me, an independentist, I must move my position. To what? In other words, I cancel out the independent position which I espouse and say, no, okay, now I give up. In negotiation, moving position doesn't mean that you sacrifice what you stand for. The two sides have some interests. And in that interest, you categorize them. There are some which are core interests, unshakable. There are other ones which say, okay, I'm prepared to move here. You understand I'm prepared to move here. If I have to move my independentist position, French Cameroon will move what? Its colonial position. What has French Cameroon got to lose by moving its colonial position? Absolutely nothing. But I have a lot to lose if I say I give up my independentist position. And that for me is a difficult situation for me. I don't think one can compromise on that. For them, this whole thing is additional territory they are talking about. We have control over, for whatever reason, political reason, economic reason, social reason, whatever. But for me, what is my destiny? As an American, what will be my cut in it? If I were to give up all of this, what is my cut in it? What do I gain? Absolutely nothing. And finally, we've tried this thing. It's not just, if it was something we've tried for 1 year, 2 years, even 10 years, one would say, okay, fine, be patient, try. Over half a century we've been trying this whole thing. It hasn't worked. And don't tell me that we should just sit down again for another 100 years and keep on waiting. That perchance something might prop up. And that is my difficulty. As I've said, if I believe that there was a possibility that we will achieve something by giving up our independentist stand, that French Cameroon would stop its policy of territorial aggrandizement, trying to grab territory which is not, it knows it is not its own, then I will prepare to talk on that basis. But they are not, and they've not shown any willingness at all for the 2 times we tried. What are you talking about? No, if at the time we tried within Cameroon itself, then plus the Swiss this thing and the Canadian thing, These are people who are not interested in it. All the thing is that we dictate terms. You have to take it or leave it. We are not coming here to discuss anything. In the view of that, I don't see where we stand. I rather that people in the circumstances will say, okay, fine. Since you are prepared to pursue a war which we never called for, we never started, the killing, not us, you're the one, and the ones who have been doing the killing. According to recent reports, you are talking of over 50,000 people who have been killed already. The damage will not count, the psychological effect will not count. And they've shown no sign of remorse. Not even an indication in their parliament that are preparing to discuss this issue.
Prof, all what you're saying is true, but the question that the people are really dying for, let's assume that the conditions are more acceptable for us to engage in a dialogue. What is it that we are willing to give up? Because it's not only us giving up in that event of that dialogue with the government. They also, like what you're saying, what are you giving up? If you're going to expect me to give up my position, what would you be giving up? In the course of that conversation, then we can come up with an agreed upon position that this is the way we're going to move forward. That does not in any way mean that we should give up your position before even getting into that dialogue.
What do you expect a thief to give up?
Well,
stolen property.
Until you engage in a dialogue with that thief.
Yes, dialogue with a thief to hand back your property.
I think at least historically, you are right to point to me and to Carl to say that, to ask us where is the Anglophone leadership. We weren't expecting that 30 years later.
Yes.
Anybody were pointing at us because,
we're going out to sleep, sleeping was quietly doing our thing.
I shouldn't at 76.
Exactly.
Projecting myself there as leading anything.
Bello is running for president.
Yes,
let him do.
Yeah, well, he is, and in a way,
Akere is there running too.
You're right. I mean, if those who are spoiling the country are spoiling it at 80, we were trying to fix it.
You cannot give up.
But having said that, you see, again, Carl's position might appear to be, diametrically opposed to mine, and vice versa. But that is exactly what makes
the richness of our people
sitting down necessary. Because unless you are stupid, you cannot enter through this room and right in your head, meet other people in this room, go through a discussion, and still get out of this room with the same idea in your head.
It is true.
So, and that's why personally I have been advocating the holding of an Anglophone, some people call it General Conference, call it whatever we will. In fact, some will say AAC3, but there is a need for Anglophones to meet, whether physically or virtually. Virtually, as that is made possible these days. Preferably physically, but if virtually, why not? For us to meet and go over the issues, assess our aptitude for this or that initiative, and so on and so forth, and come up with a consensual position, which forms the thing that all of us are pursuing. It may not satisfy everybody, but it represents what we have all agreed on. And when we have agreed on it, then from north to south, east to west, amongst our people, including those in the diaspora, will know this is what we Anglophones or we Southern Cameroonians want. But as long as we remain, continue to organize ourselves in a way that, do you know that when I was working with the late Cardinal Toomey on this Anglophone General Conference initiative, now I was with him in Douala when the independentists called a meeting in Washington.
Washington.
In Washington, yeah. And they sent us, I think it was August of that year, 2019 or something like that. They sent us an invitation. They invited the Cardinal, invited me, invited Abobala, and so on. So, and we agreed to participate virtually. You know, and on the occasion, the cardinal unfortunately took ill. He couldn't participate virtually, but he sent a written message. I participated virtually from Douala, Agobala from Yaoundé. And you know, after my intervention, people sitting in the, on site, that conference in Washington, I think.
Yeah. Right here in Bellsville.
All right. Someone said, who invited Munzu to it?
Sorry.
Yes. So, who even asked you, who invited him to this thing? You know what? They were treating those who extended the invitation as if they were saboteurs, blackmailers, and so on. That level of intolerance. Episode number 2, they had here in the U.S., at least based in the U.S., something called the Southern Cameroons Town Hall.
Oh yes, I've heard. No longer exists. Yeah,
and so on. Yeah. So after a series of episodes of that, I received an invitation from someone who they said they wanted me as guest. I go anywhere where there is opportunity for dialogue. I go. I knew I was stepping into in fact, it's not enemy territory, but I was prepared to do it. I went. And the time came, they asked me questions, we interchanged and all of that. Before that, in fact, a committee of about 5 people sitting at the other end kind of interviewed me, screened me for that appearance.
Come and declare.
Yes. So we took part in that, asked questions. Well, again, I was pleading for this kind of thing, that Anglophones should get together. This thing about, but again, as soon as the thing ended, for the rest of the time, people were just accusing each other. Why did you allow that man to come here?
It was not only you, Dr. Munzu. I can tell you, for those of us who were present at that meeting, it was not only you. It's unfortunate. I think for me, the import of conversations like this is to see what people like you, I really am not saying that we are resuscitating you from maybe retirement, but there must be a synergy between the older generation because of the experience and the younger generation that are looking for innovative ways to see how they can push the same agenda forward. And I strongly believe that if the two of you can step up and say, you call these both sides to order, they might be willing to listen. Because I don't see any other credible voice. I've come to the people who are advocating for a federation or maybe resolving the issue internally, and the independentists that Prof is saying, people are also saying, you know what, we have had enough of all these people. The credible voices that can step forward and say, okay, there's a need for us to maybe come together. You can have independentist people call a meeting and they don't want to meet with the federalists. You have federalists saying, okay, the independentists are not reasonable. If our people see, particularly now that there is almost bound to be chaos in Yaoundé, our people need a sense of direction. So it is incumbent upon the two of you to reassert yourself and say, we have been here before, we know the pain and suffering of our people. This is the way we think that we should figure out a collective point of departure on how to face this situation going forward. Because we would agree that in as much as La Republic is concerned, there is no difference as far as they are concerned between the independentists and the people who are looking for a federation. And maybe that explains why they have not in as much made a statement to even engaging with the the federalists to maybe even hold that conference that you were talking about, or even push that idea forward. One thing I wanted to also bring to your attention today for the independentists, you can see a slew of Western governments now saying that they're going to recognize Palestine. What message does that send to our people? That are you going to stick to this fight for a long time, and definitely they're going to get to a point where what is happening in the Palestinian territories today. I think yesterday Australia indicated that they are going to recognize the Palestinian state. The Germans have indicated that I think they even stopped the shipments of military-grade weapons to Israel. Canada is also saying that France was the lead of all of this. And I'm asking myself, for the independentists, can we play the hand of France against Trump? Because it looks like Macron is now openly trying to defy Trump. And could anything happen from us playing our hand and telling, hey, in his backyard too, he has people who are going to leave the state of Cameroon. Can you take that and drop in his face and say, okay, if you're going to recognize Palestine, I will also recognize the person in your background, because at the end of the day, it's all politics. International relations, Dr. Muzu, you know, is a game of interest. Everybody is positioning for some interest somewhere. But it was a little bit of digression to bring us back to say, okay, could something change tomorrow? Or are we going to now maybe just step forward and say there's a need for us to come together as a people and articulate a position of strength moving forward? Because if you speak, you only see the two of you speaking, and to a sense of a particular direction that they think this can be very effective, Yaoundé is going to tremble. But if we are going to allow all the people that we have seen that have invaded the social media, because to be very honest with you, I agree with you, the social media has been what they, La République, and most of the international community evaluate our readiness. But if you look at the people speaking on social media, I had a conversation with Archbishop Kia once, and I asked him, if you're talking to somebody like Capo Daniel, you as a canon lawyer, for how many minutes do you think you can sustain a conversation, a rational conversation with this guy? It means you're being unfair to yourself, and because that is the person you are pointing that is representing you as somebody from the two English-speaking region. So it needs us, and when I mean us, it is you people, to fill that vacuum, step forward and look for a way to bring our people together. As far as the leaders are concerned, we've tried to also make the elections in Cameroon part of the conversation to force them to release the people that they are holding in Kondigi and other jails across Cameroon. Because if you're going to engage in any dialogue that you're resolving the problem from within, there must be some kind of healing process to start somewhere. So my plea to both of you who are not only elderly statesmen, but people who actually revived and instigated the English-speaking region, the Southern Cameroon's consciousness of the level of injustices that has been done to our people. The ball is back in your court to try to find a way to rally our people. Let our people hear that the two of you were very instrumental from 1990s SDF to 1994 with the ACC 1, ACC 2, are willing to say, all right, irrespective of our differences, we are going to try to bring our people back together.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the core, I don't want to call it appeal, but the core has not fallen on deaf ears. I presume I'm speaking for me and Carl, but Carl is right here, if he thinks otherwise. There is a need for us to initiate action that brings back a sense of direction and destination to our people, whatever that is. But that can only come out of an honest discussion of the types that we used to have in those days of the AAC. You know, when this crisis started with the lawyers, the first time that President Biya addressed the nation after the commencement of the crisis was in December of 2016, his end of year message or New Year message. Yeah, and the consortium issued a statement in reaction to that message. But before they issued it, you know, Agbobala, who was heading the consortium,
picked him up.
Contacted me.
Okay.
You know, gave me the opportunity to see the statement that they were about to put out. And I reviewed it with him, and they finally released what they released. Now, I say that to, in a way, reinforce what we were saying. At the beginning, the people who were championing this cause had that sense that there was a stock of experience they could tap on. Okay? But later on, the social media warriors hijacked the entire thing. So there was no systematic anymore, you know.
Yeah.
So we'll think about it.
Yeah.
We'll think about it.
Yeah.
For us federalists, we are putting the response of this government, and we've always done that, putting the response or lack of response of this government in context with the attitude of that same government to everything that the Cameroonian people want. Keeping aside the dichotomy Anglophone-Francophone, please ask yourself, in a whole range of economic, social, political, civil liberty issues that the people of Cameroon want this government to address, how many have they addressed? Just an arrogant regime. So,
well, the argument has been you can lump the people of Southern Cameroons with the entire territory. That's part of the argument.
No, you can. Why not? I mean, that's for separatists. That may not be, but but for federalists,
that's a separate independentist argument.
Yes, absolutely. That I can understand, because it's like, why are you even bothering with them? We are not part of it, but we are part of it. And the things that are hurting Cameroonians, it's just that as we both of us said earlier, Carl and I, we English-speaking Cameroonians have a history. It is in our DNA to protest.
Correct.
You know, but otherwise, in terms of the suffering, the things that we are really complaining about, those people there are, and increasingly they're beginning to wake up. Increasingly, Francophones are beginning to say, we too.
They have another 40 years to wake up.
We'll
be all gone.
I'm glad you brought these issues up, 3 issues: social media, our taking action to initiate an invitation, and the whole issue of Palestine. One of the things I decried, even in 2016-17, and I said, my goodness, the most evil thing to happen to the revolution is the social media.
Yes.
We're better off in our good old days when there was no such thing.
Yes.
You know, we were writing things by the hand, when fax came was quite, but this social media just come and derail everything. Everybody saying what they want, you don't know who's speaking the truth, where, when, and how. So that is something. Unfortunately,
you are adding AI now.
Yes,
AI
it makes things even worse. Yes. So as for the invitation, yes, like Smaka said, we will not run away from that responsibility, because I received messages myself the days when I had phone. It's now that I'm cut off completely. People saying, "What you and I? What are we doing about this thing?" I said, what are we supposed to do? You have the leaders. So how are we supposed to do? He said, no, you should do something about it, because the way things are going, why don't people just sit together, issue an invitation, do things, so that calling people to come together.
It would be sponsorship.
Yes.
Do something like that.
So I said, okay, this is something I'll talk with Mark about. We are willing to do it. But if the expectation that we'll do that, take leadership, no, we are not into that. We are willing to call together to make that call, let people come and so on, and people listen to people and proceed with leadership. Now we are, I must say, tired. It's not our not running around with issues, even though there are people who are 90 and above who are running. We don't want that. So that will do that, we'll discharge that responsibility. As for the Palestinian thing, the only thing I want to remind us is that we don't have an authority on the ground. The ambassador, we don't have. So I'm not sure what it is that I'm going to recognize. If somebody were mandate to recognize, we don't have any authority. We don't control an inch of our territory. Whereas for the Palestine, they have an authority that's been running for years.
Yes.
Hamas has been governing
Since 2007.
the Gaza Strip until recently when Israel went to war and so on. So it's quite reasonably easy. But I think the lesson about that is that when you persevere long enough and you are determined, you don't detract, eventually, things will slowly turn around and come around. I think that's the only lesson, that's the lesson to learn from the Palestinian situation. So thank you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I think we've come to the end of this spirited conversation concerning the people of the southern Cameroons and the current situation in Cameroon as a whole. We are very hopeful that the two learned senior statesmen from our place answered your questions and provided some clarifications on some of the issues and the difficult aspects of understanding what the Southern Cameroon questions is all about. We're going to continue this conversation, but I am going to hold them since they have committed to do something and bring in some sense of direction back into the Southern Cameroon question. There's nothing wrong for both the federalists and the independentists sitting together and having this conversation for the good of our people. I don't think any one of us, particularly those of us who are here in the diaspora, living in pristine environment with AC offices and cars, would like our people to continue in this suffering that is on the ground. We need to find a way to bring an end to that crisis, a resolution one way or the other. If it means it is for us to solve that internally, given conditions that will be far better than what our people have lived through for the past 60 years, then collectively we would agree to that. But if even the Francophones are tired of us having this relationship with them, then we could each go our separate ways. But the present situation cannot last forever, because the pain and suffering on the ground is really unbearable. And with that, thank you to all our viewers, and thank you for those of you who send questions through my phone. We might not have addressed all of them, but this is not the end of the conversation. So once more, thank you and have a good night. Lachi.
All right.